Hi everybody, Steven here. In this video, I'm going to talk about this thing called network I/O control, which is found on distributed switches. And if you ever wondered what it is and how to set it up and what do some of the settings mean, well, you need to stick around and watch this video. See you in a bit. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. So in this video, I'm going to do a demo on network I/O control and kind of show you what it is and how to set it up. Network I/O control has been around, I think it was since version 4 of vSphere, but don't quote me on that. It's been around for quite a long time, right? And we find this on distributed switches. So this is not available on your standard switches. And this can be used, again, if you want to kind of massage your traffic in your environment. You only got a couple of network cards and you got all this different type of traffic that's going to utilize it, right? But we'll take a look at that. Anyways, before we get started, again, I got a little bit of an electric component, not much, but it's mainly all demo in this one. But before we get started, I always like to throw this out there. For those of you that subscribe to the channel, again, 10 thumbs up to you folks. Really appreciate it. And for those of you that haven't subscribed to the channel or you know, kind of like this type of content, please consider supporting the channel. It's totally free. You just click on that subscribe button. Without subscribers, there's no content developers, okay, folks? So keep that in the back of your mind. Also, I notice a lot of my views, 75% of my viewers out there are non-subscribers. So please consider supporting the channel if you want more of these videos to come out, right? But anyways, why don't we get started? Okay, so you'll see that I'm in my lab environment right now. So what is network I/O control? Simple way of looking at network I/O control is just like what it says. It's allowing you to control the I/O of your network, right? Let's say you're in a situation. Let's say I've got some kind of 1U rack server, or I got a small server. It's only got a couple of network cards, right? Let's say, just for example, I got two 10 gig cards inside that server, and that's it. I don't have any more. And across those two 10 gig cards, I got to have stuff like vMotion traffic, management traffic, virtual machine traffic, vSphere's fault tolerance, maybe iSCSI, maybe vSAN, whatever the case may be. You're going to have all this traffic going across 2 NICs, all right? Or maybe 4 NICs. And you want to be able to sort of carve up that bandwidth or have a little bit more control on prioritizing your traffic. Maybe you don't want one particular traffic monopolizing all the traffic from the other ones. So for example, maybe I don't want, like when I do a vMotion, also my management traffic can no longer, you know, I can't manage that host anymore, right? That could cause some problems. So network I/O control allows you to kind of prioritize your traffic. Just like when I talked about shares and limits and reservations for memory and CPU, I'll leave a link to that video on resource management at the end. Anyway, so let's take a look at this. Let's look at my environment. I've got a cluster here. It's a vSAN cluster with three hosts. That's all it is. I got a bunch of VMs here. All right. Okay, great. When we look at my environment, each of my hosts, in my example here, has 4 NICs. And I decided just for this demo that I'm going to have 2 different distributed switches, one for my demo and another one just for my vSAN, just to keep things separate, because I'm going to stress my distributed switch a little bit in a minute. So if I click on my host here, if I go to configure, physical adapters, you'll see I've got vMNIC 0, vMNIC 1, vMNIC 2, and vMNIC 3, and you'll see the first 2 NICs are on distributed switch 01, the second 2 NICs on distributed switch 02. So let me go to here, let's go to my distributed switch. You'll see I got 2 distributed switches, VDS01, VDS02. VDS02 I'm using basically for my storage traffic, vSAN and iSCSI. It doesn't really matter. This is a lab I'm going to be blown away. But right now you'll see I've got on distributed switch 01, I got management, production, replication traffic, test dev, whatever. So I've got different types of traffic on there, right? Now, network I/O control is enabled by default on your distributed switch. Let's create a distributed switch. Let's right click, distributed switch, new distributed switch. You'll give it a name, I'll go next. You'll pick what version you want. I got the latest, I'll just go next. And then over here, network I/O control, notice it's enabled. You can disable it if you want to. Okay, maybe this distributed, maybe you don't want to use network I/O control at all. Maybe this distributed switch is just for VM traffic only and nothing else. That might be a case where you would disable it. But anyways, you can leave it enabled if you want to. The other settings I talk about in some of my other videos, but I'll quickly go over it. Network offload capabilities. These are for NVIDIA and AMD smart NICs or DPUs. today, as a recording in this video, this is really more for an NSX environment. I may do a separate video on that. How many uplinks is this distributed switch going to have? What it's asking you is how many network cards is each host going to add to this distributed switch? So if I've got 3 hosts with 2 NICs each, then I would say, okay, both those NICs are on each host are going to go to this distributed switch. Then I would put 2 here. Well, no, 6, sorry. I put 2. So each host is going to add 2 uplinks or 2 NICs, okay? And that can be changed afterwards. There's network I/O control. And then the last part down here is just, do you want to create a default port? Anyways, you don't have to. You can if you want. You can always do it afterwards. Anyway, click on next and away you go. I'm not going to bother doing that. Let's cancel this. Let's go to my distributed switch. Let's go to configure, and you'll see under system traffic right off the bat, you'll see this is network I/O control. You'll see over here, it's enabled. It's on version 3, which is the latest. Notice it says physical network adapter 6. Minimum link speed is 10 gigabits. Each of my server, I got 3 servers, each have 2 NICs on this distributed switch. Those NICs are 10 gig each. So this is what it's giving you the report right here. Total bandwidth capacity is 10 gig. It says, what's the fastest NIC that you have? That's my ceiling, how fast I can go, right? So 10 gig, that's my fastest NIC. What's the maximum reservation I can actually reserve on those NICs? I cannot reserve, if I got a 10 gig NIC, I can't reserve 10 gig, okay? Because your NIC can't hit that, right? So VMware is saying, okay, we'll only let you reserve a maximum of 75% of that speed of your NIC. So if this was a 100 gig card, I could reserve, 75 gigabits maximum, right? Again, 40 gig card, you can do the math on that, right? So it's going to say, what's the fastest card? That's going to be the 75% of that. By the way, this can get skewed here. I can't see people doing it, but I guess some people do it. You might get a situation, and I can't see this, where I've got different cards in my server I want to put on that same distributed switch. I got a 10 gig card here and a 1 gig card I'm going to put on that distributed switch. Obviously, that's going to skew these results. The minimum link speed now would be 1 gig, okay? There are some command line stuff where you can say exclude that 1 gig card. I think it's just bad practice to be doing that, right? Keep things the same, makes life easy. Anyways, so what do we see here? We see the different types of traffic, all right? We see I got storage traffic, I got virtual machine traffic, vSphere fault tolerant. If you don't know what that is, I got videos on it. vMotion traffic, management traffic. You'll notice right off the bat, again, you'll see I got shares, limits and reservations, just like for CPU memory. So now a limit, I think is pretty obvious. You can go in and say, I want to put a limit on this much speed on certain traffic. So you can go in here, put a limit on your vMotion traffic. Maybe I'll limit that to 1 gig. Let's type that in. Let's do that edit. Maybe I'll limit my vMotion. I'll just randomly pull numbers off the top of my head. I'm not telling you to set it to this. So I might say, okay, just put it to 1 gig. Now my vMotion traffic will go to it'll be limited to that much bandwidth. It cannot consume anything more than that. Again, don't just blindly set values here because you're putting a limit, okay? I'm gonna remove that, okay? Let's actually see this limit. Let's go unlimited. Let's see this in action. Okay, right now I don't have anything set. Let me go to one of my VMs here, and let's go to this. So I got iPerf 3 on these. Let's go to the client here, and let me just run iPerf 3 on the client. And oh, it's not running. Let's try that again. Oh, what's going on here? Let me pause that and get that going. Okay, so we're back. Something happened to my iPerf 3 client, so I just redeployed it. Anyways, let's run iPerf 3 -client, and then the server is 172.20.40.11. I put a timeout of 3,000, so this runs for quite a while. Oh, let's see where I made the mistake. There we go. That's better. All right. So it's running right now. And you can look over here under the bitrate column. I can't really highlight it, but you'll see I'm hitting about 20 gigabits per second. okay? Which sounds pretty high, doesn't it, right? I get 10 gig cards. This is at 20 gig per second, over 21 gig and stuff. I can probably even push it further than that if I really want to. But that's not the point here, right? So let me go in and let's go to my distributed switch. Now, just to show you, this client and the server right now are on this port group, PG production. Let's go to server, PG production. Production port group is right there. That's on the distributed switch 01. So let's go to the first distributed switch. Let's get rid of this screen here. Let's go into configure, system traffic. Let's go and go network, virtual machine traffic. Let's edit. Let's put a limit. Again, I'm not telling you to do this in production, but I'm just showing you what this thing will do. I'm going to put a limit here of 300 megabits per second. Okay, so we see a radical difference here. I'll say 300 megabits per second. And there we go. There we got the limit. Let's go back to the client and see what it's showing us. It's still showing us, again, if you look at the, again, I can't really highlight this, but you'll see it's hitting around 20, 21 gigabits per second here. That's the 1, 2, 3, the third column from the right. You'll see it about 21 gigabits per second. Didn't I just put a 300 megabit per second limit? What's going on? So what's going on here is if I actually go to my servers, if I go to the client, if I click summary, you'll see it's running on host 1, ESXi host 1. If I go to the server, it's on the same host. So technically, these two VMs are on the same ESXi server, which is host 1. Let me just show you again. I'll click host 1, I'll click VMs, and you see there the Ubuntu client and server are actually on the same ESXi host. Now, I know it's a VM, but it doesn't really matter. So technically, they're talking in memory. So they're not actually hitting that uplink to get to the outside world. Let's fix that. Let's go into here. Let's go back into, let me just migrate one of the VMs off of that. Let's go back to Ubuntu client. Actually, we'll do server. And I'll migrate it to host 2. And I'll say next, whatever. Finish. So we'll just give that a few seconds to do its business. So I'm moving the server over to the iPerf server over to a different host. So now when I go to host 1, you see there's the client. Okay, if I go to host 2, you see there's the server, iPerf server. Let's go back to the client and see what it reports. Notice the throughput's dropped now to roughly about 300 megabits per second. So it's actually now going through the uplink. So the limit does work. It's putting an actual limit on that. So if I actually, yeah. So let's go back. Let's remove that limit and just see what happens, right? Let's right click. Sorry, not right click. Let's go into here, system traffic, and let's get rid of this. We don't need this up anymore. Virtual machines, edit, and I'll say it's unlimited, and we should see it bump up now. Let's go back to the client. Don't worry about the through. We're getting about 1.5 gigs. Okay, I know, again, this is a nested environment to see all kinds of quirks and stuff. So don't worry too much about that number there. Worry about the number that I actually put the limit on, right? So again, that's what limits does, right? It puts a limit on something. I think that's pretty obvious. What's a reservation? A reservation is a guarantee of bandwidth, right? And this is the part where this might look a little strange, right? So as I mentioned before, right now I've got my link speeds on my host are 10 gig cards. I've got 3 hosts. Each host has 2 NICs. So that's 3 times 10 at 60 gigs aggregate throughput. Again, you see the 6 NICs here, and you see I'm using Network IO version 3. Let's go in and reserve. Now, let's go in and reserve some virtual machine traffic. Now, before I do that, I'm going to click on Network Resource Pools. And you'll see over here, it says to create a network resource pool, you must configure a reservation for virtual machine traffic first. So right now, there is no network resource pool. So let me go back to here. Let's go into virtual machine traffic, and I'll go edit. And maybe I'll reserve 7 gigabits per second for VM traffic. And I'll say OK. So what I'm doing now is I want to guarantee 7 gigabits per second from my VM traffic. All right, so we see over here my bandwidth capability or capacity is 10 gig. I only got 10 gig cards. Maximum allowed to reserve is 7.5 gig. I've reserved 7, okay, and available is 3, okay. So VMware's kind of thrown in that extra buffer there. That's why you're only allowed to do that 7.5 or 75%. Now when I go into network resource pools, if I click on this, Notice these numbers look a little weird. Configured reservation is 42 gigs. Hang on a second. Didn't I configure a 7 gig reservation? Where'd this 42 gig come from? Remember, I got 6 NICs, 3 hosts, 2 NICs each, right? So 6 times 7 is 42 gig aggregate throughput. Right now, granted, I don't have anything, I'm not using any of that. I haven't granted, no VMs have any reserved, and I got 42 gig available to me. Now let's create a resource pool here. Let's click on add, and I'll call this maybe production RP resource pool. So when you create a resource pool now, you can give it a reservation. So let me say gigabits per second. Let's say 6 gig, all right? That sound good? Yeah. Let's just say 4 gig, just to be on the safe side. 4 gigabits per second, I'm gonna reserve. I'll say okay, all right? So I just created a resource pool. Let's add another one, maybe test dev resource pool. And maybe I'll give them whatever, maybe 2 gigabits reservation. I'll say okay, all right? So now what do you do with these pools? Notice over here, again, configured reservation still 42. Granted is 6. Where did I get the 6 from? 4 and 2 is 6. You created a resource pool that potentially could use some of this reservation here. Virtual machine reservation, there is none. And unused quota, again, I got 36 gig available. Remember, they're looking at the cards aggregate throughput, right? So let's go, and what do we do with these pools? Let's go to my production port group. I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna edit settings, and if you ever created a port group before on the distributed switch, by the way, this is only available on distributed switches, you'll see network resource pool. There's the default one, which is like none. It's like the whole capacity. I can now pick the resource pool I want. So I'll pick production for this guy. I'll say okay. Let me pick vSphere the test dev, edit settings, and then maybe I'll pick that there. So this is how you assign those reservations to that pool. So I gave, let's go back to my distributed switch, and let's go back to here, resource pools, and I gave production a 4 gigabit per second reservation, right? So let's go to my production port group, look at the VMs there. I've got a bunch of different VMs here, webs 1, 2, and 3, and so on. Let's go to web 1 and 2. Let's go to web 1. I'm gonna power, actually, should I power these off? No, I won't power them off. Let's go in and edit the settings. Let's go into network card, and I can now create a reservation. I go into gigabits per second, and I can create, maybe I'll give this guy a 3 gigabit per second reservation. So now this VM is going to be guaranteed 3 gigabit per second throughput when it needs it. Okay? How about web 1, I should say. Let's go to web 3 now. Sorry, those webs are on that port group, right? Network. Yeah, production. Great. Let's go to web 3. Let's edit settings. And I'm going to make an error here. Let's go into reservation. I'm going to set it to gigabits. And maybe I'll do 2 gigabits per second reservation. Let's say okay. Should come back. It gives me an error. Specified parameter is not correct, right? Let's go into here now. The reservation required on the NIC is greater than the quota of 1,000. So remember, I created my resource pool. Let's go back to here, resource pool, distributed switch, configure. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so here is my resource pool. I gave it a 4 gig reservation. And I gave them the first VM 3 gigs, and I said the second VM I tried to give it whatever. I was giving it more than this pool could allocate to it, right? Sort of like, think of it as like a car rental place. This car has 100 cars to rent out. Well, it cannot take 101 reservations on the same day. It doesn't have enough cars, right? Same kind of thing here. You're saying, well, you've got 4 gigabits for this port group, and that's what I'm going to reserve. It can't reserve anything more than that, all right? Okay, so let me actually do something a little interesting here. So that's kind of reservations in a quick nutshell. Now, notice over here, my VMs, let's give this guy maybe a lower reservation. How about that? Let's edit web 3, network adapter, reservations. Let's give it 1 gig. This should work. There we go. So it's got a 1 gig reservation. Let's go back to my distributed switch here. Configure, system traffic. Network resource pool. When you go to the network resource pool now, you'll see again, It says granted is 6 gig. Virtual machine reservation is 0. Hang on a second. This is the part that I always thought was a little weird. Don't I have those 2 web servers that have reservations? Why aren't they being shown here? Okay. The reason they're not being shown, I'm gonna bump this up, by the way. Let me just edit this. Let's me bump this reservation up to, I don't think it'll let me do 7. I can't, actually, let me get rid of this one. Actually, it won't let me do that. Let me edit this, move this down. Let's do megabits, so I'll save it, 100 megabits, whatever. And then let's give this guy something a bit more. Edit, 6 gig, say okay. All right, come on, there we go. So why isn't this number changing, right? What this is reflecting from what I found out is a reservation that you give a VM that's not part of this pool. So let me go to another VM here. Let's go to, I don't care which one. Let's go to Ubuntu 1. What port group is that? This Ubuntu VM is on a different port group here. Let me right click on it, edit settings. Let's go to network. Let's do reservation. Let's give this guy, I don't want to give me any error. Let's give this guy 1 gigabit per second reservation. There we go. Now he's on a different port group. That port group does not have a resource pool. Let's just confirm that's on management. Right click, edit settings, and you'll see it's the default. So I'll click next. Now let's go back into my distributed switch, configure network resource pool. You now see there it is right there. It's showing that. So this number here is what VMs have reservations that are not part of these 2 resource pools. Okay, so that's kind of neat. All right, let's take a look at something else as well. Let's see what happens if I can't meet a reservation. All right, so let me just stop the recording and come right back so we split this up into pieces. Okay, so we're back. Again, I like to split up my videos just in case something happens. I don't have to start right from the very beginning. So here's my production resource pool. It's got a 6 gig reservation. Let's look at my VMs here. So I got Web 1 and Web 3 are on production, okay? Let me try something out here. So this Web 1 right now has, I said a 6 gig reservation. Web 1 has a 3 gig reservation here. Okay, great. That leaves me with 3 left over. Let's power off Web 3. Again, I should be shutting it down, not just powering off. This is my lab environment, I don't care. So Web 1's got 3 gig. Let's go to edit settings here. Let's go to Web 3. I gave it 1 gig. I'm going to give it 5 gig reservation. That's obviously higher than what I've specified. So I'll say, okay, it let me do it. Okay. All right. Let's right click and power this on. Boom. Okay. No host compatible with virtual machine. So what I've done is my resource pool has a 6 gig reservation. Web 1 is currently running and it's taken 3 gig of that 6. That means I got 3 left over. Web 3 now, I gave it a 5 gig reservation. It was powered off, so it doesn't care. But as soon as I power it on, it says I need 5 gig. It says, sorry, resource pool doesn't have enough, doesn't let me power it on. So this is kind of the dangerous part of reservations. You really got to watch out that you don't overcommit stuff because a VM may not be able to power on. Even if there's a failure, a host failure, potentially what could happen is a VM may not be able to power on. Just like when we talk about CPU memory reservations. Again, they sound nice and pretty, but they could come back to bite you in the butt afterwards. I also want to do something else as well. But before I do that, let's take a look at a PowerPoint slide that I just want to show you, right? So let's say okay on this. Let's put this back. Let's edit settings, network adapter, and let's put this back to, we can do, yeah. Actually, yeah, we'll just put it to 0 or whatever, reservation minimum, none. Say okay. All right, so let me just bring up my PowerPoint. Okay, so we're back. Let's look at this. This is one of the things I'm going to set up right now. So this is kind of like what my environment is, okay? I've got this distributed switch 01. I've got 3 hosts. You know, this is ESXi 1, this is ESXi 2, and that's 3. I've got a couple of VMs here just to show you. Here's my 2 VMs here, right? Each of my servers have 10 gig cards, all right? So again, and it's plugged into my physical environment, whatever the case may be. So technically, I got aggregate max throughput of 60 gig. That's kind of theoretical. I can't do that because it's across host. But again, from a reservation perspective, I could reserve a maximum of 75% of that 60 gig, okay? So let's look at this picture here. Here's two VMs. They're running on this host. Let's say I do something like this. I'm going to give this VM a 6 gig reservation and this guy a 6 gig reservation. Let's say this VM is on this uplink and that VM's on that uplink, and it's going through these physical cards. This could be VM NIC 0 in my case and VM NIC 1, let's say. All right? So let's try that. Let's set that up, okay, right now. Let's go back to my lab environment, and it signed me out. Don't know why it did that. Let's see what happens in this example here. So first of all, I want to give 6 gig to each of those, right? But I'll have to increase my resource pool. So let's go back to my distributed switch. Let's go to configure, network resource pool. I'm going to edit this guy. I'm going to give it more. I'll give it, maybe I'll give it, what, I don't know, 20 gig reservation. Say okay, all right? So now, again, this pool has a reservation of 20 gig. Let's go back to my VMs now. These Web 1, let's just look at it. I just want to make sure of something here. It's on host 2, and Web 3 is on host 2. Perfect. So let's right-click, edit settings, Web 1, network adapter. I'm going to give it a 6 gig reservation. Say OK. I'm going to give Web 3, edit settings, network adapter. We're going to give this 6 gig reservation as well. And I'm going to say OK. And that one's turned off, so let's turn it on. Come on. Power on. So they're both on the same host. Come on, there we go. All right, so they're both on host 3 here. Let's just confirm that. This guy is on, oh, host 3, how come it went on? Oh yeah, that's why. Okay, let's put it back to host 2, okay? I'm putting it on host 2. Just give it a few seconds here and let's see what happens. There we go. So it's on host 2 and this one, Web 1 is on host 2 as well. Great. Let's connect to host 2 just to illustrate what's going on here. Let's 6i1. Let's go to root. And I'm going to run ESX top. I got videos on ESX top and performance and stuff. I'm going to hit N for my networking view. So right now there is my Web 1 is on VMNIC 0. Web 3 is on VMNIC 1. Okay? So what's going on here? Let's go back to my iPad. So I gave each of these a 6 gig reservation. So obviously what's happening now, the host says, oh, I got to guarantee this VM 6 gig. I got to guarantee that VM 6 gig. So it's going to link them to each card. Each card's capable of 10 gig. No problems. So that's working, and that's what we see right now. Okay? But what would happen if something like this happened here? Let's go to this card fails. Well, I only got a 10 gig card left over now. How can I guarantee that reservation? Because normally this guy would fail over to that adapter. What would happen in this case? So let's go back into my lab environment. Let me go. That was host 2. Let me just go. Again, I'm running a nested environment. I'm sure most of you probably know that. Again, a nested environment means my ESXi hosts are VMs on an ESXi host. Sorry. What I'm going to do, I said it was host 2 they're running on, right? Host 2 they're running on. Okay. So let me go back to here. Here's my host 2, okay? It's just a VM. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go edit settings, and it's got 4 NICs, okay? There's VMNIC 0, the first NIC. There's VMNIC 1, that's the second NIC. I'm going to disconnect it. I'm going to say okay. I've just basically introduced a network failure in my environment, right? And we'll get you see it came up right away. Right off the bat, Web 3 is upset. Something's going on. Host 2 is upset because I just unplugged a NIC. If I click on summary here, network uplink redundancy is gone. So there's a NIC issue here. If I click on Web3, virtual machine network reservation status, right? Now, you'll notice it's still running on host 2, okay? So in this situation, let me go back to my iPad. We see that the VM over here, the one that was originally going to this card, is no longer happy because we can't meet its reservation anymore. Now, my cluster, I purposely set this up for DRS to be partially automated. Let's go back to here. Let's go back to my thing. Let's fix it. Let's go back in and let's fix the situation. And I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Let me go back in, edit settings. Let's reconnect that card, say okay. Let's go back here. That should clear out fairly quickly, hopefully, right? That usually I'll just do manual reset to green. You see Web3 went back to green, okay? So everybody's happy now, okay? Everybody's happy. Let's go back to here. We see Web 1 is still on NIC 0, Web 3 is still on NIC 1, okay? Everybody's happy. Let me go to my cluster now. Let's go to configure my distributed resource scheduler. I'm going to edit that. And I've got this setting set for partially automated. If you don't know what that is, you need to watch my DRS videos. I'm going to put it to fully automated, all right? And I'm going to say okay, all right? So now let's go and do this exact same problem again. Notice Web 1 is still, sorry, actually, let's just click on its host 2, VMs. You'll notice Web 1 and Web 3 are still on host 2, okay? So let's go and introduce that problem again. Let's right click, edit settings. I'm going to introduce a failure on my host. I'm going to basically disconnect that network card. Boom, and we'll give it a few seconds and it should detect that failure. Maybe I'll just do a refresh. Notice there we go, it did fail, right? If I go back to summary on host 2, it says redundancy again, we don't have network redundancy. Web 3, again, some kind of issue with the reservation status. Let's just give this thing a few seconds here. Come on, don't make a liar out of me. Gotta wait a few seconds. Maybe a little longer than a few seconds. Come on. Notice it says here, reconfiguring virtual machine on destination host. Come on. It didn't already happen. No, it didn't. Still on host 2. Come on. Reconfigure VM on this. Notice it's now happy, right? So it's actually now on host 1. So it automatically filled over to host 1 at this point, which is kind of neat, okay? So by having DRS fully automated, it allowed me to automatically move the VMs across. So let's go back to my iPad. And then at that point, again, we had that failure because DRS was set to fully automated. It actually moved the VM over to a host that was able to give it that reservation. If it could not, let's say there was no host, there's other VMs on these other hosts consuming reservations. If it couldn't move it, then obviously that VM could potentially have a problem. So this is an issue potentially with reservations, but I wanted to kind of show you folks that, right? So again, limits is something you want to be cautious about. Reservations, again, is something you want to be cautious about, but these are tools in your tool belt that you can actually use. Now, what is shares? Shares, if you're familiar with CPU and memory, it's basically the same thing. If I go back into distributed switch here, and I go to configure, if I go into system traffic now, shares is a mechanism that we use to prioritize traffic. You'll notice here, virtual machines traffic has 100 shares, okay? Management traffic has 50 shares. Fault tolerant has 50. So when all this stuff, when we start to compete for a resource, at that point the shares kick in and will determine who has higher priority. We see in this picture here, let's say if all of a sudden management traffic was going on, you're doing vMotion and fault tolerance and you got iSCSI, you're pounding the crap out of your uplinks, right? What will happen is virtual machine traffic will get basically more of the time on the network cards than the other traffic over here. Everybody else gets about 50 shares. Now you can actually go in and edit this if you want to. Maybe I want my virtual machines to have low shares. That would be 25. Normal would be 50, and high would be 100. or you can type in a number here. Again, that number has to be up to 100. Let me try 101. Won't let me do it. So maybe I go, well, I don't want to do, 25, 50. Maybe I want to do custom. Maybe I want to give it 75 or something like that. Okay. So this is a way for you to prioritize your traffic with shares. Shares, again, do not kick in till there's contention for a resource. Okay. Once we start competing for that one resource, that's when shares kick in. Right now, let's say there's no VM traffic and there's no management traffic, and all of a sudden you issue a vMotion, right? The vMotion traffic could use up all that bandwidth, okay? Because nobody else is using it. So shares is a very polite way of prioritizing your traffic. So if you're gonna play with network IO control, you got the three things. You got shares, limits, and reservations. Limits and reservations you want to be very careful about, okay? Blindly going in and setting those, you could be shooting yourself in the foot. If you're not sure, leave them alone. Playing with shares is a safe mechanism, okay? Don't underestimate not prioritizing management traffic. Do I agree with this here? I don't know. I kind of like to have my management traffic a higher priority, because when I go to do troubleshooting, if I can't connect to the server because of network traffic's being consumed, then I can't manage it, right? So to me, I kind of like having the management traffic to have a little bit higher, just to be on the safe side, right? That's just me, okay, folks? I think that's about it. I hope you found this informative. This is something that's kind of pretty neat. It's been around for a very long time. It's only available on distributed switches. Anyhow, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Leave comments and questions down below. And if there's something you want to see me do or cover, please, leave that down below. Okay? And that's it. We'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.